Welcome to WoW Training. My name is Eagle Eye, and today we are going to be talking about the talents for a Marksman Hunter and going through every single tier of talents and explaining why we've chosen what we chose. First talent is the level 15 talents. If you'll notice, Post Haste. When you disengage, it frees you from all movement impairing effects and increases your movement speed by 60% for 8 seconds. Let's compare that to Narrow Escape. Disengage also activates a web trap, which immobilizes all targets within 8 yards for 8 seconds. Now, if we are doing a raid environment, we don't care about immobilizing mobs because most of them are immune to immobilize effects. Narrow Escape is actually a PvP talent, quite obviously. Now, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera reduces the cooldown of Disengage by 10 seconds and the cooldown of Deterrence by 60 seconds. Now, the cooldown of Disengage is 20 seconds, and Deterrence has a 2-minute recharge on its 2 charges. So each charge recharges after, I think, 2 minutes, maybe not, 3-minute recharge. So it reduces it from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. So Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera is probably your second choice if you're using a lot of disengages and deterrences. However, you probably won't need them that often. What is nice about this is it's basically an on-demand speed boost that you can do every 20 seconds. You don't really care about doing it every 10 seconds. If you can't wait an extra 10, or if you can't wait the full 20 seconds, then something's probably wrong. This is really handy in a raid environment when you need to escape ground effects. For example, currently on the Twin Ogron fight, when there's the Pulverize and you find yourself in the middle of the gigantic one that's about ready to fall, you can disengage out of most of it, and even if you're on one edge and you disengage across the entire thing, that 60% movement speed increase at the after you disengage is very helpful as well. This is also very helpful for like the Korag fight. If you are soaking puddles and they're tanking all the way across the room and you need to get to a puddle quickly, you disengage backwards towards it, turn around and run, and you can very easily get to the little swirly on the ground to soak the ball that falls on top of your head. So this is also very helpful in the Bracken Spore fight currently, where if you are using the flamethrower and you need to go clear some of the moss, you can disengage and get a 60% movement speed boost through the moss with the flamethrower and kill a ton of it really quickly. I do believe it stacks with aspect of the cheetah, so you can do both of those at the same time. And aspect of the cheetah combined with glyph of aspect of the cheetah, which causes you to not get stunned. Only to all it does is when you get hit, you lose your aspect. That means that you can use that reliably in a raid environment as well. So they all stack well together. So Post Haste is the obvious choice. Wyvern Sting is again a PvP talent. It puts a target to sleep for 30 seconds. Any damage will cancel the effect. This is good for PvP environments where you're like sleeping healer or it's another silence or stun, but it's only a single target. Intimidation doesn't mesh well with Lone Wolf at the bottom, so we're not going to bother with that because you have to use your pet for that one. Binding Shot is really nice for packs of mobs when you want to stun all of them if you're kiting or otherwise need to work with. You can work with your tank on this. I've actually worked with my tank where I say Binding Shot down and he'll move them in order to cause them to all get stunned. And so this is really good for PvE as well. Ironhawk. Really, this Ironhawk is a nice passive effect. You don't have to worry about hitting it all the time. It's very different from Exhilaration, where it's like, you may not use Exhilaration every 2 minutes because the time that it comes off cooldown may be a slow part of the fight where you're not taking much damage. So having that passive 10% from Ironhawk all the time is really good. And of course, Spirit Bond does not mesh well with Lone Wolf. So by using Lone Wolf, you're missing out on not only the other two 100 talents, you're missing out on a few others as well, namely Intimidation and Spirit Bond. Of course, if you're a Beastmaster, hunter, you'd probably want both of these, and you wouldn't use lone wolf, of course, because it doesn't exist in beast mastery. The next one. This one is very interesting, and it required a lot of thought and a lot of testing. So you can do your own testing and verify what I'm saying here, but let's start with Thrill of the Hunt. This one seemed like the obvious choice because aimed shot is 50 focus. Now, you can't see it off the side of the screen there, but it says you have a 6% chance per 10 focus spent on focus costing attacks to trigger Thrill of the Hunt. So you have a 6% chance every time you actually press a button to use an ability that costs focus. When you get this, you get 3 charges, and Thrill of the Hunt reduces the focus cost of your next 3 arcane aimed or multi-shots by 20. So aim shots go from 50 to 30. And now you don't have arcane shot in Marksman spec, so it doesn't affect that. And multi-shot is really not all that great. It's only viable or valuable when you have 6 or 7 targets. You'll learn very quickly that you'll actually do more DPS single targeting a whole trash pack down one at a time rather than doing multi-shot. So really all this will do is give you 3 charges for your aim shots. Now, keep in mind, though, when you cast aim shot, you could proc another 3 charges and waste the other 2. The problem with this is aim shot is a focus dump, and it's really a filler for when you're waiting for any of your other shots to come off cooldown. If you have a lot of focus and you're dumping focus, you don't mind dumping 50 instead of 30 necessarily. I mean, of course, you want to save focus where you can, but more often than not, I found that I was only using 1 of these charges, so I'd only get 20 focus out of every, as a net gain. I'd gain 20 focus out of this every other time I'd use aim shot. And it wasn't always available. I'd still be spending 50 focus on aim shots every once in a while as well. So it's really just kind of a waste. You're never going to use all of those charges. This is different from like survival, where your focus dump is arcane shot, and because of Thrill of the Hunt, you're bringing it down to 10, and it's on a global cooldown of 1 second. So you can quickly, in 3 seconds, use all 3 charges of Thrill of the Hunt and spend 30 focus on 3 arcane shots rather than 90. So that's a nice, huge savings. I mean, it's a 66% savings on arcane shot, but it's only a 40% savings on aim shot. So this is really a survival talent, if I have to be honest here. So anyway, let's go to steady focus. Now, steady focus is probably the next best one for Marksman compared to Dire Beast. And all of these are really actually, somewhat viable. Let's just be honest here. Dire Beast, if Dire Beast is the number 1 choice at 100% viability, steady focus is probably at around 90%, and Thrill of the Hunt is probably around 80%. So they are relatively close together. But anyway, steady focus, using steady shot twice in a row increases your focus regen by 50% for 10 seconds. Here's the problem with this one. You want to keep it up 100% of the time, but you end up making these really difficult choices of, well, I just did a steady shot. My Chimera shot is off cooldown. I have enough focus to cast it. Do I spend another 1.5 seconds on a steady shot to refresh or even start up my steady focus? Or do I cast the Chimera shot? And there is no good answer to that question. I mean, the conventional wisdom is always use Chimera shot every time it's off cooldown. You want to squeeze as many Chimera shots into a fight as possible. Yes, that's true. But then you're losing your focus regen from steady focus. So, even if that's going to be for another 3 seconds or something, because you have to use 2 in a row again in order to start it up. So if you're gaining 4.5 or 4.3 per second, it's just you have to make a sacrifice one way or the other. So then we come to Dire Beast. Now, what Dire Beast does is it gives you a nice, steady flow of focus by you summon a beast that attacks the target, and every time it hits the target, you gain 2 focus. And the nice thing about this is it actually does damage. The Dire Beast actually does a small, I mean, very minute amount of damage. And it's a 50% uptime. It's a 30-second cooldown that lasts for 15 seconds. So every 30 seconds, you just weave this into your rotation. Instead of casting a steady shot, you put your Dire Beast out. And so your Dire Beast is working to increase your focus passively or in the background. It's kind of like a dot. You apply a dot and then you keep on firing, right? You apply this and it's like a dot for your focus, or it's a focus over time thing. While you put out the Dire Beast and then do a steady shot instead of 2 steady shots in a row, and your Dire Beast is working for you, and the steady shot does a nice burst of 14 by the time you're done. Anyway, so what I've done is I've actually woven it in to my rotation. In fact, and I'll get into this in another video. 3 is my steady shot. Alt 3 is my Dire Beast. So if Dire Beast is off a cooldown, instead of doing a steady shot, in lieu of a steady shot, I put out my Dire Beast. And sometimes by the time I get my Dire Beast out, I have enough focus for other things anyway. So it's like it just takes a global cooldown, and that's all there is. So anyway, that's that. Now, the next couple are very much obvious, right? Your basic pet attacks, okay, I'm a lone wolf. I'm not going to do it. Stampede, it works, even in lone wolf, as far as I'm aware. I haven't even tried it, but it makes sense that it works because you're calling them all out of your stables anyway. But it's just, Stampede is just not as much damage as Murder of Crows. Murder of Crows is actually your second best ability behind Kill Shot, and so you always want to make sure Murder of Crows is on the target, for sure. So it's pretty obvious Murder of Crows is going to be what everybody uses, and it's really just a no-brainer, to be honest with you. Glaive Toss, the Power Shot, of course, is just not being used by anybody, but there's a debate right now between Glaive Toss and Barrage. Now, the reason I fall down on the side of Glaive Toss is because it is safer in a raid environment or a dungeon environment. Barrage, it tends to shoot behind you, because of weird line of sight calculations by the game. It tends to shoot way too far ahead of the trash pack you're trying to kill, and you end up pulling extra trash packs, so it's just not safe. The other option, or the other problem with this is, people look at the raw damage it does, but they fail to take into consideration that it's like, right now, mine, I don't know if you can see the tooltip, but it says it's a 2.75, here actually, 2.75 second cast, dealing 40.8k damage, right? If you divide that 40.8 into the 2.7 seconds, it's actually around maybe 15k DPS, right? And you have to channel that. So 15k DPS is not all that great. Now compare that to Glaive Toss, which is a single global cooldown. That single 1 second cooldown does 2,000 damage to each enemy struck, and then but it does 4 times as much to the thing that you hit. So in 1 second, you're hitting one thing for 8,000 with one of the 2 glaives. Now each of those glaives does that damage, so that's 16,000 DPS from the Glaive Toss on the target that you're targeting. It doesn't do as much damage to the other things that surround it that the glaives pass through, but when most of the time in a raid environment you're attacking one boss and you're a single target focus fire machine, so Glaive Toss actually is a greater DPS than Barrage. It's safer, and you don't have to sacrifice other DPS by channeling for 2.5 seconds, or almost 3 actually, in order to do it. It's just, you fire it and forget it, and it's still doing damage while you're able to do other things. That's the other thing about Glaive Toss or Barrage. The downside of Barrage is that what happens if you have a kill shot or a chimera shot come off cooldown while you're barraging? Do you want to clip the barrage? Well, then you're clipping your DPS from one shot in order to fire another. So you're making a sacrifice of DPS in order to gain DPS, and that doesn't make sense. Glaive Toss has the higher DPS anyway, and it's just, it's a quick 1 second thing. You don't have to make that tough decision of, do I clip it in order to cast my other shot. Finally, Lone Wolf, and this is a simple calculation. I've done the testing, and I found that exotic munitions being the second best choice, with the poisoned ammo, is about maybe 15% or I'm sorry, 10% of my damage done. You got to keep in mind and read the tooltip very carefully to understand why this is true. Arms your ranged weapon with exotic ammunition that lasts for 1 hour, each auto shot. There it is. Each auto shot, your white damage, deals 1800 additional nature damage over 16 seconds. When the effect is refreshed, the remaining damage will be added to the new effect. So it's a rolling stack, basically. Now, this may change as haste increases for a hunter. With haste comes, faster auto shots, so your DPS with this will become higher. But as it stands right now, Lone Wolf is the way to go. Because, see, if you're doing 10% of your damage with exotic munitions, and you look at your pet is doing 15, maybe 18% of your DPS, or your damage from your pet, choosing Lone Wolf means you have to do without either of these other possible options. It also means you have to do without your pet. So you're losing exotic munitions and you're losing your pet, but you're gaining this 30% additional damage from Lone Wolf. So all in all, I figured it out that I was losing 25% of my damage, but gaining back 30%, which is a 5% increase. So Lone Wolf is, of course, the way to go. Plus, you don't have a pet to manage. You don't have to worry about your pet going and pathing when you jump off a cliff, and all these other problems that come along with having a pet around. Plus, you get every single other thing here. All these different buffs that you can buff the raid with, rather than carrying around a stable full of pets that can do all of these things. So there's that added benefit. So as far as a raiding single target machine, max DPS spec is concerned, these are the talents you're going to want to use. Your mileage may vary, and as stats increase and as the patches come out, these may change. But as of 6.0.3, I think we're in right now, just prior to 6.1, these are the talents that you're going to want to use. Thanks for watching.